Hi, it's Tanya from My Forking Life, and today we're in the kitchen and we are making sweet potato pie. Now, this is one of my favorite pie recipes. It's also one of my most popular recipes on the blog, and it's got a lot of good reviews on the internet as well as in person. Now, if you like this kind of content, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Also, hit that bell notification so that you're notified every time I upload a new video. Also, please give me a thumbs up if you like this content. All right, let's get started. The first thing we're gonna do is gather our ingredients. Of course, for a sweet potato pie, you're gonna need sweet potatoes. You're also going to need some other ingredients. I've got some brown sugar, some salt, some evaporated milk, some eggs, of course, some flavoring that's gonna be in the form of vanilla extract, cinnamon, nutmeg, and some ginger powder, as well as some butter because everything's better with butter. All right. Now, before we get into the recipe, what we need to do is prep our sweet potatoes. Now, this recipe calls for about 1.5 pounds of sweet potatoes, which is generally going to be 2 medium sweet potatoes. I do actually measure the sweet potatoes and try to get them as closest to 1.5 pounds. Now, the way we prep these potatoes, you could do them how you prefer. I have offered 3 different options and 3 different ways that I've personally made the pie before. You could air fry these. You could bake them in the oven, or you can put them in the microwave. Both of them result in really good roasted sweet potatoes that are perfect for this pie. I've also heard feedback from people that have boiled the sweet potatoes before baking them in the pie, and they loved it too. And if that's what you want to do, go ahead and do that. But the only way that I have made these pies is either if I've air fried the potatoes, which is actually my favorite way to prep the potatoes, or if I baked them in the oven, or if I put them in the microwave, but actually did turn out good as well. And I've got the times and the temperatures for that on the blog post. All right, so you're gonna go ahead and prep your sweet potatoes. You're gonna bake them whole. I already did that. And as you can see, they're nice and roasted. I haven't even peeled them yet. So I'm gonna go ahead and peel them. You'll see, even got a little bit of brown spots on the inside. Don't worry about those. That's just flavor. All right, and I'm gonna just plop that in a bowl. I do try to get rid of some of these like excess dark spots if I can, but I don't think about it that much. Now, before we proceed with this recipe, I do want to talk about the crust, because the crust of a sweet potato pie is also super duper important. Now, you could of course use a homemade pie crust. You could also use a store-bought pie crust. It really doesn't matter. Just make sure you got a really good crust. I am actually going to switch it up today and use a graham cracker crust. This is a store-bought graham cracker crust because it was just easier for me to grab. But let me tell you, if you want a really good, delicious spin on a sweet potato pie, put it in a graham cracker crust. Oh my gosh, delicious. So that's what we're gonna use today. And if you're using a traditional, pie crust, you do wanna prep that pie crust before you bake it. So you either follow the directions that are on that box, which usually say to pre-bake your crust, or whatever recipe that you're following. If it's a homemade crust and they tell you to pre-bake it, go ahead and follow those directions. All right, now let's get to our filling. So the first thing I'm gonna do is mash these sweet potatoes that I've got here. And you can see I've baked them to the point where mashing them is pretty easy. And I'm using a whisk because this is the only equipment that I'm gonna use for this recipe. Nothing fancy. I'm not putting this in a blender. If you'd like to do that, you could do that as well. But if you've baked those sweet potatoes the way you're supposed to bake them, like I said, stuck in my whisk, they should mash pretty easily. Now that I've got my sweet potatoes mashed, I'm gonna go ahead and add the remaining ingredients. So I've got here about 1/4 cup of softened butter. I'm just gonna plop that in there. I'm gonna lightly beat 2 eggs, 2 large eggs, and add that in there as well. Need to wash this table down. Half of a cup of evaporated milk. You only need 1/2 cup. Just gonna plop it all in there. 3/4 of a cup of light brown sugar. Plop right in there. A teaspoon and a half of vanilla extract. And the rest of our spices, half a teaspoon of cinnamon. Ooh. Half a teaspoon of nutmeg. A quarter teaspoon of ground ginger. And a quarter teaspoon of salt. You've got all that in a bowl. Just go ahead and mix it until it's thoroughly combined. So as you can see, our batter is ready to go into our pie crust. Now you'll see I have a few little bit of lumps in there. Like I said, this is a homemade pie. I do not put it in a blender, but if you want to, you could do that as well. All right, so I'm gonna pour this into this graham cracker pie crust. Just kind of plop it in there. And I'm gonna kind of just spread this filling out just a little bit to make sure that it's evenly spread throughout. Bam. And that is it. We're gonna put this in our oven that has already been preheated to 375 degrees, and we're gonna let that bake until the pie is set in the middle. That will take you about 40 to 45 minutes. The way I check my pies pretty much is I just jiggle them, and if I see like a little bit of a wet mixture in there, that means it's not completely done. If it's like a big wet mixture, if it's a little bit of a jiggle in the middle, then it's good to come out, because we're gonna basically remove our pie and allow it to cool, but it will still be kind of warm and cooking when we remove it. All right, so 375 for 40 to 45 minutes. All right, y'all, when your pie is done baking, you do want to remove it from the oven and you want to let it cool for at least an hour. That's going to let that pie solidify and set. So you don't want to touch it. My key to the best sweet potato pie is to actually remove it from the oven and let it cool overnight. You could let it cool to room temp and then put it in the fridge, and then before serving it, remove it and bring it back to room temp. But either way, this is what your pie should look like. This is a delicious and set sweet potato pie, and it's so homemade, and it looks, you know, so homemade and delicious. All right, so I'm going to cut a slice. Get myself a big old slice. I cut myself a really big piece. I've been too big of a piece of a cut. I didn't get all my crust out. It's all right. Oh, it's so good. We'll pretend like I cut the perfect slice. But either way, this is it. The best sweet potato pie. With that graham cracker, it's so good. Now that's good. All right, guys, until the next time.